Click, click. Let's see. I think I'm online. If I could get a confirmation. Oh, cool. Hi, Cortez Phoenix. We have a good evening. Here it's right in the afternoon, 12:20 California time. Cool. Oh, hello, Dion. Nice. Okay, so I guess I'll just get started talking about the topics I have listed in the video description. So if anybody has anything else that they want to talk about, feel free to type it into the comments, which I'll be checking frequently, and we could switch the conversation to those topics. Otherwise, I got a bunch of stuff to cover, so I'll just keep on going ahead. Oh, cool. Hi, Xali. I thought you were supposed to be doing paperwork, but instead you're chilling on YouTube. Not to say that you haven't helped us do that before. Alright, so the title I made for this stream is... Oh, my window's slow. Okay, here we go. The parameterization of everything, and then some Japanese emoji, and then you are unique. So I'm building off of a point I made in the last stream, which is to say, just with people in general, you know, we're all unique whether we like it or not. Every person comes from a different place, a different family, so, you know, you are unique. However, one of the big selling points for a lot of these platforms, including this upcoming metaverse stuff, is this idea for unlimited customization, that type of thing. Now, this idea is very, very deep in our society. Like, I remember growing up, have you guys ever played something called like a icebreaker sort of game? So often in an icebreaker type of activity, it'll be some new group of people that are meeting together to do something. So oftentimes that, like, if you went to a university, you might have a tour group when you visit a university. So then people will sit in a circle, and whoever's hosting will have some sort of silly, innocuous questions prepared to get people just warmed up and talking to one another. I think they continue to do this in corporate offices and all sorts of other places. Anyways, the sort of questions they might ask would be something like, "What's your favorite food? What's your favorite flavor of ice cream?" Or "Who is your favorite superhero?" This sort of question. Now, if we're talking about actually getting to know a person, I think these questions, they're kind of stupid, right? Like, if I like strawberry ice cream instead of chocolate ice cream, what does that matter? What does that say about who I am, about me, and, you know, what does it mean? Yeah, we see this sort of question is very common on lots of sites where you build a profile or that type of thing. So yeah, like in the preview image, I had this image of, like, what do you call it? Character. I used it from this video game, Ragnarok Online. But you could see a similar thing in all sorts of places, where character creation, something like this. Oh yeah, like this. make your character. And you look at how do you define making a character. Oftentimes, you know, you define your hairstyle, you define your hair colors, stuff like that. And this is the sort of variation by which a lot of computer systems will model the variation between people. So we talk about the parameterization of everything, and we say, how would you define a person? You know, would you say hairstyle, hair color, and then think of stuff that Facebook or Amazon might measure. For example, you might select your favorite book, other things that could be verified with a type of certificate, like I went to this university, I majored in this, and so on and so forth. Okay, yes. So Dion here has brought up the comment I was kind of fishing for. The parameterization phenomenon has really taken off with the popularity of the MBTI, so Myers-Briggs something something personality test. Everyone and their dog is an INTP, it seems. Right. So I'll let the people in the chat elaborate on some of the different personality types in those. So when I was in grade school, these things started to become very popular. So this is the kind of the next step after the what is your favorite ice cream. Like I think if I say, it doesn't really matter what your favorite ice cream flavor is. If you go to Baskin Robbins 31 flavors, okay, everybody could kind of agree that that's a pretty inconsequential, uninteresting question, right? But then once you start venturing into these psychological type of parameterizations, or even performance-based metrics to say like your SAT scores, that sort of things, then I think that people will start to feel these things personally. Like I could, as a joke, it would be completely politically correct to still say like, oh, mint chip ice cream people, strawberry ice cream people are better than mint chip ice cream people. Like, that's kind of silly. I think everybody pretty much could agree with that. But once you start to say something else based on another sort of metric that might enter these computer systems, for example, if you were like, oh, yeah, our school only admits people with such and such standardized test scores. Well, suddenly you've hit a very hot political topic. Recently, I'm not going to pull up the news story right now, but there was some buzz in the news about major universities stopping to look at and require these standardized tests and stuff. And a lot of people got upset or angry about this because you would have populations a lot of the times, like immigrant populations, like Asian people, who would really optimize their life basically in order to get a certain type of score. So they would want to game the system in the sense that you look at the game that the you have to win at for admissions, and you say, okay, if I have high standardized testing scores, I show that I'm involved in community service, and so on and so forth. Okay, all of these ideas, it all relates to what I titled this video, the parameterization of everything. So it's not good enough if you help an old lady carry her groceries and cross the street, right? Better than that, by this whole parameterization game is, oh yeah, now what you have to do is you have to quantify how helpful of a person you are. Another funny term I heard, I'll just type it down here, is resume-driven development. So a programmer friend shared this with me, and it's referring to this phenomenon how a lot of young working professional type people will cater their, whether it's their LinkedIn profile or their actual paper resume that they'll set up, people will look at what the parameters are by which they're being evaluated, and then they will try to pick the winning parameters such that like an automatic screening system or a policy-driven kind of admissions process will allow them to succeed in what they're doing. Now, just as a caveat, I'll say to all this, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with evaluating qualification for a job based on like merit or something like that, right? There's nothing wrong with saying I only want to hire somebody who could actually fix my roof and won't fall off the roof and get injured to fix my roof that is leaking. Something like that. That's totally reasonable. I think pretty much everybody would agree with that. But what we've seen an explosion of in society at large, as a lot of these digital technologies have become more widespread in every aspect, whether we're talking education, healthcare, now we're seeing more electronic components in cars. So transportation, logistics, it's everywhere, everything. We're seeing a lot of the so-called digital transformation. What accelerated the digital transformation of your company? So the nature of this digital transformation type stuff is that we have reality. We're just gonna assume and agree that we all share reality. We're not in the matrix together. We all share this reality together, and then it's the job of a lot of the data model designer people in order to define and model that reality based on parameters. Parameters meaning stuff you could measure and you could count. So you might ask, why would you want to parameterize reality? And I think that the clear answer to that question is because if you could enter in all sorts of details and information into a computer system, then the goal, the dream, the idea, whatever you want to call it, is that you could then use computers and data science, whatever you want to call it, in order to calculate a winning outcome. So this is just like, we all know that a computer could beat a human being at chess. Computers have been able to beat the best players for quite a while now. And if you just take someone who doesn't play chess like me, then of course a computer could easily defeat someone like me, even if I spent a long time studying. Now, this only works in chess, because chess is a game where every move is quantified. You'll be like, move the pawn to A3 or whatever, right? There's a grid. Well, we're on YouTube, so let us just pull up. We could pull up an image here. We could use the technology well that we have. So in a chessboard, everything is parameterized in the sense that you could describe all the game states perfectly, because by definition, that is what defines a chess game. Okay, so we all know chess is not real life. For example, let's just consider the question: is chess a model of war? Is it a good model of war? Well, when you have two opposing forces facing, first off, are they all more or less equal? I think that the answer to that question would be no, because some of the interesting stories about battles or history will be, for example, a smaller army defeats a bigger army because a brilliant tactician of the smaller army does some clever tactics and is thereby able to defeat the larger army, something like that. Another thing, like in that example too, like terrain, right? So maybe the smaller army is able to beat the bigger army because there's a different, they exploit variations of the battlefield. So in chess, there basically there are no variations of the battlefield. That's why chess is kind of more fair. Like, let's pretend you and I play 100 games and we flip a coin to decide who starts as white or black, so that we could say, if let's say white has an advantage for moving first, we neutralize that advantage by submitting it to random chance, or maybe we even decide to alternate who goes first, whatever you want to do, something like that. The point is that in a game like chess, where everything is rule governed and a chess program won't allow you to break the rules, then the computer is able to successfully calculate how to win. Okay, so what is the next step beyond this, sort of in modeling how to win in reality. So I heard that like there's this game StarCraft, and I hear StarCraft 2, so I'll just search up. But apparently StarCraft 2 has pretty good artificial intelligence. And we could see many ways like how StarCraft is more advanced than chess. So, for example, two of the things I mentioned. Number one, chess is turn-based. And number two, there's an even playing field, so to speak, in chess. Now, unlike chess, StarCraft could actually model different terrain. Different terrain. It doesn't have to be turn-based. That's why this whole genre is called real-time strategy, right? This sort of game, real-time strategy, became very popular because you don't just have to wait for your opponent to do something like you might have to in chess, mashing that clock button. Instead, what you're able to do is, if pretend your opponent is being too late, like delayed thinking or coming up with a strategy, well, then you have the advantage of time. You could rush in and attack. In the same way where you could look at how a lot of like military strategy, history of that sort of stuff, you'll see how an ambush or an element of surprise might confer an advantage to you. Oh, cool. We have another friend joining here. Just Sun says, "Hi, Alan. I am your fan. Loved your blog." Well, hopefully I could live up to your expectations and provide good content here. Thank you for joining. Cool. All right, so Dion says, it's conceivable to modify chess to have terrain asymmetries. You could look at something like Fisher Random. Yeah, so Dion brings up the point that you have some game like chess, and in order to make the game more interesting, people have done stuff to modify the game. Another game like I remember having played as a kid was this game called Stratego. And then this game was interesting because unlike chess, what your pieces are wouldn't be revealed to the opponent. So I'll just pull up an image here. Like the idea behind this game that made it kind of interesting was at the start of the game, both players would have the opportunity to arrange all their pieces in the way that they liked. So by arranging your pieces in a particular format, you could try to set traps for your opponent. There is a element of unknown with this game. So this game would model, say, if I'm a warring nation against you, presumably there's things I know that you don't know, and there's things that you know that I don't know. So a game like this might be a little bit more interesting in modeling that sort of idea of you don't know what's going on. Likewise, it would be much easier to cheat in Stratego. When you're playing games with your friends, I'm not saying cheat. If you're playing Monopoly, don't take money from the bank and hide it under the board. I've done that before for fun. But don't do that. That doesn't build good habits in life. Okay, anyway, so back to like a game like Stratego. Right, we could have these different games that might model different aspects of what warfare or something will be like. So, one of my favorite metaphors that I think is funny is like 4D chess. There's this idea where it might like look like you're losing in a chess game, but maybe you're doing something above and beyond that. Like, what if you're losing in a chess game to win the favor of your friend or something like that? So you might be losing the chess game battle, but you're actually playing 4D chess because it appears you're losing, but on the big game you're actually winning. So we have like a political meme here, Donald Trump lost the last election, but was he just playing 4D chess? Was he winning in 4D chess? Interesting. So, anyways, kind of returning back to the topic of games, we can see how games, a lot of a lot of computer research and games go hand in hand. And one of the ideas behind this is because if you could reduce a situation down to a set of countable moves, discrete, quantifiable things, then you could actually calculate the path to victory. Now, if you try to take that approach just to your everyday life, people will probably say, depending what you're trying to do, they might say like, oh, you're calculating, you're a psychopath, something like that. For example, I would not recommend using this sort of calculation with relationships. Like, you shouldn't say, oh yeah, I know that people like compliments, so I'll just give a bunch of people compliments, and then they will become my friends, and I will systematically do this, and I will make a ton of friends. Okay, that would be called flattery, and that's not good for you or the other person. But you could actually see how a sort of strategy like that would work, and there's fields that study that sort of thing. Like, we could talk about how a lot of marketing and persuasion techniques and that sort of thing are used, and how they rely on parameterization, metrics, and all of this in order to win a game. That game being sales of some kind. So whether sales of a product directly, like what is the formula of things that I go through in order to sell a car or something, right? You could read books and stuff on this, and you could see how people reduce stuff down and turn a human interaction into a game. So actually, I'll just reach on my bookshelf really quick and just grab one book to show some examples of this sort of stuff. So I was doing like some business book type research over the past few years, really. And for example, one book I read was this. So this is a very informative book. So I'll just read off the back cover. Influence, the classic book on persuasion, explains the psychology of why people say yes and how to apply these understandings. So such and such. It says the author, Robert Cialdini, is a seminal expert in the rapidly expanding field of influence and persuasion. So stuff like this, I kind of jokingly called like the dark arts of linguistics. My background is I studied linguistics as a graduate student. So a lot of that is, what's the structure of a sentence? Grammar. Oh, the diversity of languages in the world. It does not, it's just trying to see and understand stuff. You aren't really doing much. You could ask, what is applied linguistics, so to speak? One area in which you could understand applied linguistics is like this marketing influence type stuff. It's like, okay, now we have an understanding of language, communication, and how it affects people. Now, how do I turn this into winning moves? So that's the sort of thing that when reading these books, like this influence book, I learned. Another guy who got famous for talking about this stuff is this kind of influential, the author of the Dilbert comics, this fellow, Scott Adams. He's kind of controversial. I think he's still on YouTube, so I don't think I'll get banned for showing his stuff. But yes, this bold man that drinks coffee has a lot to say about sort of politics and how people, I guess you could say, play mental games with each other, even at an institutional level. Okay, cool. So I'll just return to the chat really quick. So we're joined by another guest, Reaper. He says, yes, Alan is a cheating monopolist. Surprise, shock. I don't do that anymore. I'm confessing in the past I had done this, not with anything at stake, just like having fun playing the game. And I soon revealed that I did it. So I didn't like create a aura of mystique that how does Alan always win at this game or something. Didn't take it to that level. All revealed within an hour or two. Let's see. Okay, so Reaper mentions another group. Yeah, like how to win friends and influence people as an example of like a popular kind of, you could call the genre like self-help business type book. I think like a lot of the self-help genre, people might make fun of people for reading like a self-help type book. I don't think, people read self-help because they're interested in doing better in their life. So for instance, somebody might have a hard time making friends, starting conversations, something like that. So then they might read a book like How to Win Friends and Influence People, because they want to understand how to do that better. So yeah, I agree with I think the general sentiment behind this comment that there's nothing wrong with trying to learn how to connect with people better. I mean, I'll just say, like, for example, this very channel, I'm trying to do stuff on this channel that I learned from watching other people's channels to see, hey, what sort of things have succeeded and what sort of things have not succeeded, that various YouTubers did. Like, I have this really cheap, super ghetto setup for my thing. Like, I haven't invested in any fancy equipment or anything, but I'll take a couple minutes to make a fun thumbnail. Now, why is that? Well, because I've seen how people have clicked on videos just because they like the thumbnail. And then on a video, let's pretend you spend a couple $1,000s on video equipment or something. You might get somebody be like, oh yeah, you look nice in that light. Or like maybe a couple passing remarks or something. But ultimately, I think if it's not like the stream is so laggy that it annoys people, truly it wouldn't be much of a turn off. So that's kind of me making a sort of business calculation with this stuff, which is to say, maybe in the eventual future I would upgrade the equipment and stuff, but would it be on the time horizon of something urgent to do? Right, so sort of game thinking, parameterization. I'm like, if nice equipment falls, does that mean that stream views go down? And my basic conclusion to that was, perhaps like a little bit, but ultimately it would not matter or be as important as other stuff. Okay, so Dion says, this marketing stuff is also an application of parameterization. Exactly, right? So you could say, why are these people trying to collect all this data? Metadata, right? Let's return to that word meta. Facebook, meta, right? Why do you want all this metadata? Well, it would be for the purposes of parameterization. Like, even as I speak, like on YouTube, for instance, they'll give you data like, oh, okay, viewer engagement, and then they might even try to give you more data some people would regard as creepy, like, oh, what is the age and gender distribution of your viewers, that sort of thing. So all this is examples of parameterization, and the idea is that people will look at that sort of stuff and they'll be like, all right, so it seems like my viewers are mostly like males between the age of 20 and 40, and they're also interested in anime. Therefore, I know that if I run ads for how to get anime waifu in VR, then maybe that will really sell, right? So then they try to sell me this idea based on this parameterization. Uh-oh. Now I'm getting some more specific accusations. Reaper says, did you steal monopoly rent money from your parents to invest in cryptocurrency? Absolutely not. And Reaper says, regarding self-help, I was saying how one perspective is kind of game theoretic parameterization, manipulative style, versus kind of if you are nice to people, good things might happen. Yeah, I think that, so just going back to this topic of parameterization generally, I think like one of the good aspects about a lot of these self-help books is they aren't very scientific in the sense that oftentimes you'll just have a person that just says stuff, just like somebody might give you some advice. You might hear what their advice says, and you don't turn to them and be like, do you have a source for that? Like, do you have a study that supports that? Like, there's a lot of people that just know things based on their experience, and the way that they know it is not necessarily from parameterization and data-driven models for knowing things. Instead, they just they know things, you could say, personally, not from crunching numbers and stuff, but from interacting with people and through interactions. So I guess that would actually, I think this is a good way to transition to say, so how is the parameterization stuff different from just knowing useful techniques in order to like connect with people or talk to people or sell products? Like, maybe the opposite of trying to maximize sales would be, are you able to identify your customers' actual needs and find a product, a solution, whatever you want to call it, that fits their needs? Like, are you able, let's just say you're a car salesman. You could ask the question, are you able to do fair business in this sense that you have a customer, you knowing cars better than they do, you determine what's the sort of car that would be best for this person and how they would use it, and then get that person a car. And there's nothing wrong with taking commission. That's your job if you're a car salesman, to take a sale and then sell it to them like at a standard fair price, such that they walk away and they don't think that they got ripped off and cheated. And for you, that you took a fair share to compensate you for having the expertise in cars and also working on the sales floor and whatever it is that you might do. So I think that would be the sort of ideal, that's the sort of interaction you want when you buy a car. You would want a person that genuinely cares to help you, like a brother or a mother, right? Like a person that isn't out there to just maximize sales, but is there to actually have a mutually beneficial arrangement such that they help you and then you help them by paying them some commission. Okay, so we have another comment. Reaper said, regarding equipment, one basic suggestion is a $10 ring light in front of your face, because it has a lot of dark shadow. All right, throwing shade on me. Watch this. I'm just gonna tilt the light, and then my little fluorescent light will make me glow a institutional fluorescent light. Now I am a true. I'm glowing. Alright, Reaper also says, I missed the reference to where the phrase parameterization of society comes from. Did you invent this? Not many Google hits. Yeah, I there's this term parameterization. So I prepared just showing, where did it go? Oh yeah, codepen.io. So a lot of people that do web programming stuff, they've probably heard of this site. In computer programming, people talk about this word like parameters, like arguments for a function, that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I'm just using the word parameterization generally, so I'm borrowing the technical language from computers. But the idea is basically that you try to model or describe a situation in terms of measurable, countable quantities. And then I'm bringing that into this general idea that looking at games like chess or StarCraft, that the whole idea, why would you want to do this to begin with? Do you want to look at and crunch numbers all day? And the answer is, well, if you set up a system that could do that for you, then what you're able to do is you're able to calculate your way to victory. Victory in the sense of maximizing some metric, like profit, right? So a lot of data-driven companies, analytics, that sort of thing, that is their objective, right? They want to maximize. I wouldn't even say that that's their objective. That's the approach. By parameterizing what it means to be their customer, or what it means to be, a subscriber, whatever it might be. They want to parameterize their viewers, quantify various aspects of them, and then find the optimization of those values, like a best fitting model, such that they could win in some metric. So once again, reflecting back on like what YouTubers do, like a lot of YouTubers, for example, they'll talk about doing things for the algorithm. So what does that mean, to do something for the algorithm? Like, I'll give you an example of one sort of video that got popular for a while. People would say, okay, actually, if I make videos that are kind of around 10 minutes, below 10 minutes, YouTube might sort of flag it as a nothing kind of throwaway, too low effort video. And then if it's just too long, then it could be that it doesn't capture people's attention. But 10 minutes, that could occupy someone's break. If someone's just working a normal 9 to 5 a wage type job, let's pretend they have a couple 15-minute breaks in. So if during your 15-minute break you could consume a 10-minute video, then hey, that might actually be a nice bite-sized thing to consume. So there would be a lot of YouTubers that would aim to make this kind of lunch break fitting sort of video, where they would make about a 10-minute video, and people, they would also too would develop very formulaic introductions as well as outros. So for example, they might always greet somebody in a particular way. Like, I'll just show one YouTuber that I've been watching recently. There's this guy, Graham Stephan. He does like real estate and money. But if you look at his channel, you could see that this is an example of a person who tries to understand and maximize or milk, whatever you want to call it. He's a very sharp guy who's able to watch, learn, and adjust his channel in order to optimize for views and that sort of stuff at YouTube. So we could look at like attributes of his channel, his videos. So I'll just read, for example, some of the lengths of his videos. So Shiba Inu, 14 minutes, 56 seconds, 14 minutes, 13 seconds, 11 minutes, 55 seconds, so on and so forth. So all these videos are over 10 minutes, below 20 minutes. For all of them, you can see he makes a custom preview image. He's kind of playing on this idea of the reaction video. So people will kind of make fun of, like you might have seen the soy face meme. This thing. People will make fun of how on YouTube you'll get all these videos with these thumbnails of these adult creators that have these over the top emotional responses to stuff. So a creator like this Graham Stephan fellow, he catches on, he understands, and he sees these trends. So he's saying like, okay, look, I know that on YouTube, if I make these kind of like goofy React looking thumbnails, that they'll actually get a lot of people to click on them. And people might be doing it kind of ironically, like some people might say like, oh yeah, I know this is a clickbait title, but that's funny, so I'm gonna click on it even knowing it's clickbait. Like what I'm doing right here, describing his channel, I'm not saying to not do that, but it's just to say that an intelligent, skilled creator like Graham Stephan, he knows what he's doing, and when he's making these videos, right, then he's following a kind of formulaic process, which he gets from data insights, basically, as well as, I'm sure, he reads his comments and knows what his audience is interested in. So a combination of both. But it is worth pointing out that a lot of people, right, they will look a lot at the data in order to sort of win. Yeah, just like looking at a couple other. So he's also playing on this idea of a lot of the kind of self-help hustle culture type videos. people will like to show themselves with like a bunch of money. So like another famous guy, or infamous, for example, is this Grant Cardone fellow. So there's pictures of him just being rich, with his he's got some airplane. He had some fancy club. He's got a bunch of money, maybe with some famous people, and so on and so forth. So once again, they understand some sort of thing that works for a particular demographic, probably. So they will identify the sort of person that they're trying to attract as the audience based on the parameterization. And then you smash the same button over and over and over again to consistently deliver that product in order to meet the preferences for the type of audience that you're seeing. And like I'll admit, like for myself, that like YouTube analytics, for example, am I scoffing at them? Am I saying they're useless? Like absolutely not. Like I've clicked on a video because I said, okay, I want to watch YouTube, but I'm not going to watch for more than 30 minutes. So of the top 10, 20 videos that come up on my screen, okay, what is a video that's under 20 minutes? Something like that. And then I might choose to click and watch a video among other choices for the express reason that particular video is of a certain time period. Or I might even, I might see one of these videos and I might think that the person did a good job. They made a funny thumbnail or something. So then I might actually give them a like, even though I didn't watch the whole video, just because I like their thumbnail. Okay, so I'm telling you some stuff that I've done, and I think that it's not, this sort of thing I'm describing is not rare at all. Tons of people do this sort of thing, and using the analytics and then also talking to people and studying it. Like right here, we're doing a kind of study right now about various ways people do this stuff. We're doing what they would call a qualitative analysis. We're doing a qualitative analysis. So that means we aren't necessarily just looking at numbers and trying to say we prove something with data and science. Whereas an approach that has gotten popular in the social sciences and more is quantitative analysis. And, both of these techniques, they have their legitimate applications. But I think that nowadays in today's society, there's a huge bias towards saying, oh, quantitative analysis, you do stuff in numbers, therefore your brain must be big, right? You're doing quantitative analysis, so you must be smart. Okay, so I'll rewind this all the way back and to chess and that sort of stuff. Now, so why would quantitative as opposed to qualitative analysis be presented as the big brain or the smart thing to do? And I think that it goes down to basically it's a trust, it's a hope, a faith, whatever you want to call it, in the sort of methodology of big computer calculates stuff and then you make the world better by optimizing metrics. So when people are talking about machine learning and all that, the machine learning, it's only as strong as the types of data, the sort of parameterization that you use, right? Like if you had machine learning and let's pretend you didn't include any data on race or ethnicity, then by definition, the algorithm is not going to do anything based on the parameter called race and ethnicity. Now, if there's emergent patterns and different groups behave differently, like let's say, I'll just use Asian Americans as an example because it's still politically correct. Okay, like if all the Asian Americans, let's just say, more Asian Americans buy boba milk tea, okay, and then you're trying to optimize a food truck sale for the most to maximize the number of sales and make maximum profit. And let us just suppose that boba milk tea is extremely, extremely profitable because the ingredients are super cheap, and then people will pay like $5 for one of these, as opposed to, let's say you also sell some fancy coffee. Maybe it actually costs you like $3 to make a cup of that coffee, and then you only sell it for $4. So it makes much more sense to you to sell the boba milk tea, or to make the most of your profits off the boba milk tea, because you have a much higher profit margin for every unit that's sold. So you might, take some data, crunch some numbers, run some Facebook ads, do that sort of thing. And then at the end of the day, then the Facebook ad basically might tell you, after you're done with your analysis, that in order to make the most money, what you should do is you should go to this, move over by a university where there's a lot of Asian Americans, set up a food truck, and maximize boba sales. And if you do that, you maximize the boba sales, then you're going to make way more profit than, for example, suppose in that shopping center there's like a little traditional family-owned pizza place, and they don't have as fast of a turnover because it'll take 10 minutes to cook a pizza or something. Just the nature of the stuff that they're selling, the nature of their business, it's such that they cannot get the turnover as fast. And also because they're sourcing like fresh vegetables and stuff, they might not be able to have as big of a profit margin. Whereas like with the boba, let's pretend you just mass order tapioca bowls, and you you just cook a massive quantity of these in like some gigantic cauldron thingy. So basically, like in your little food truck, all you have to do is just go like scoop, scoop some ice, like push a button, dispense some tea. Your turnover could be ultra fast. You get a couple of cashiers working, so you're doing the like multiple line thing going at once. Before you know it, you can make $1 million because you put in the work, you collected the data, and the thing that you decided to do was exploiting like data that you had. And it could be like with this example I'm giving, you could say that, okay, so you made $1 million, but that's like selling crack to the kids, except for instead of selling crack to the kids, you were selling diabetes in a cup to Asians. Like you could compare it, that it's kind of similar, the nature of that business. And you could decide for yourself what you think is okay and not okay to do. But that is kind of like an example of what a logical conclusion to parameter-based victory might be. It could be, all right, so at the end of the day, if you want to optimize sales, ultimately, this is the sort of thing that you want to do. So then economists, they'll come up with all sorts of terms for like, what are the other stuff that might happen. So let's visit, I think, Investopedia. Right. So you do your business, you optimize, you play chess, and then there might be externalities. An externality is a cost or benefit caused by a producer that is not financially incurred or received by that producer. Externalities by nature are generally environmental, such as natural resources or public health. For example, a negative externality is a business that causes pollution that diminishes the property value of health or people in the surrounding area, right? So when we optimize for stuff, right, and you aren't just thinking about the fundamentals of what is the activity I'm doing, what is it causing, you could cause all sorts of externalities. A kind of famous like AI enthusiast sci-fi nerd example is there's this thought experiment which is like, what if you made a machine to maximize human happiness or something like that, and then, or you made a machine and it was optimizing for producing the most amount of paper clips as possible, and then as an externality, a side effect, one of the things the machine calculated just by running all the parameters was, oh, actually, I need to kill all the humans. Okay, so I'll just read this. Philosophers have speculated. Zoom in. Philosophers have speculated that an AI task with a task such as creating paper clips might cause an apocalypse by learning to divert ever-increasing resources to the task, and then learning how to resist our attempts to turn it off. But this column, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so then this researcher, he had some other correction to make, some point to make about that story. But the general idea is that you have some kind of optimization, and then through doing that optimization, it might not be a good approach. Like, all sorts of people have noticed this idea, because if you optimize this one approach, all sorts of other stuff might happen. Okay, so Dion says, quantitative analysis really gets shredded when you're attempting to quantify something that has sensitive political implications. Yeah, so I think that's a good point. And this is just going on to this idea that we already know, like, if we take a little bit of time to reflect and talk about stuff, it's clear that just moving ahead and optimizing various stuff is not going to be good for society, in the sense that you could have some problem, and then whatever inherent biases or issues that are with the model, then you're just going to explode that to massive scale. And a lot of the times the way that manifests is you create a kind of winner take all sort of scenario out of what seemingly might have been like a just innocent whatever thing. It could scale into something you don't want. So, like, I won't talk about very, very specific political implications or political issues, but as like a general thing. So, for instance, like in our current political climate, one of the big issues that you have a lot of people talking about is this example of, is there a fundamental right to free speech? Something along those lines. Now, no matter what your thoughts about that are, when you have a kind of computer system or any sort of automated moderation or anything like that, you have to have a policy. And I'll give you like one example to show that nobody really wants no moderation, okay? Because like with your email, would you actually like to sort through all the spam by yourself? Like, of course not. So there is a legitimate sense in which everybody does want like a kind of censorship, because if you're on the internet and there's like, millions and millions of voices that could potentially bother you, and some people have the power to send out like mass emails, then of course you don't want like every single message from everybody, because the nature of like broadcasting is that then you would just have a messed up noise to signal ratio of people just spamming. Signal to noise ratio. So everybody wants some kind of filtering of some kind. Now the question is, what is the policy to do that sort of filtering? And the nature of the digital technology, right? So I was using like spam as an example, is that big companies such as Google, who does Gmail and so on and so forth, they have to implement things that basically make this judgment to a certain extent towards people. So one could be, have the position that, they should only block like unsolicited commercial requests, okay? And that might be like a policy that you that you implement, then other people will go further and they might say like, such and such is settled science. We shouldn't really allow any diversity of opinion on this because it actually just hinders objectives by creating confusion. Something like that, right? My analysis of this is to say, and while we're here on the stream, right, it's an analysis stream. We're here to talk together to better understand what's going on. We recognize that there are people who make choices about stuff, who make policies, and the nature of parameterization is that you are trying to steer and control and make the rules of a game in some sense, and to have like policies that optimize for something. So a lot of these sites like Facebook and stuff, they might want to give you the impression that it's kind of like a neutral, balanced platform where you have a lot of opportunities and you could do a lot. And in many ways, like that is true. Just like last stream, being a low-key Zuckerberg defender, I will continue to be a low-key Zuckerberg defender here, which is to say, we could look and we could talk about many of the ways in which a company like Facebook or Google or Wikipedia or something, they have been providing valuable services for people. But it's just like, if you have a shipping company, you have a restaurant, whatever it is that you might have, right? It's not completely neutral. You have a restaurant. If you have a high-end restaurant, they're going to have at least an implicit dress code. In California, maybe less and less, but if you have a nice restaurant, it's kind of implied that when you're in that restaurant, you're kind of conducting yourself in a particular way, and you're playing by the house rules, right? Of course, if you're playing the game, don't be like Alan as a little kid and like cheat in Monopoly. That's not good. You shouldn't do that. And yeah, whatever field you want to take a look at, you have rules, right? And the people that operate and control these platforms. So I introduced this topic, looking at Facebook and the metaverse with these images of create a character and Ragnarok online, stuff like that. You could ask, looking at these platforms, what is all this data that they're collecting, and what sort of experience are they optimizing for? What is their idea of a good platform? So one thing that Facebook came under, I won't even go there. I'll just say that one thing that Facebook pioneered, a technology that was very interesting, was this idea of the like. Now the like button was very simple. It was just you click like, and then it's kind of like a quantified unit of attention of some sort, right? Assuming you're actually using your account, you're not running some bots or something. The like is a kind of very distilled expression of this thing made me react to it. And so Facebook, they would optimize user engagement in order to drive like lots of comments and likes, because that was the sort of thing that presumably they were optimizing for. Because if they could say, oh, we have this amount of like user time on our platform, users using our platform, just engagement as measured by stuff like comments and likes, or maybe new friend requests or something like that, then they could turn around to an advertiser and say, you sell an ad on our site, then that's great, because look at we have all this engagement that they measure in these things. So then Facebook eventually, one of their pioneering moves after they made the like as a kind of distilled unit of attention, they wanted to get a little bit more fine-grained. So they started to make like these other emojis, because like, let's pretend you have a post and it's like, my friend died. Now, for a lot of people, Facebook noticed like it's kind of awkward to like that status, right? Like you want to express to your friend and react in some way to show that you care online, maybe, but is that good enough? So one of Facebook's solutions, they had a very crude parameterization, you could say, of what quantifies a user and how they interact with the platform. They only had likes and comments. Now Facebook wanted to make this a richer experience, and also too they could get more fine-tuned analytics for what they're doing. So Facebook, so this, it says 2016, so maybe around 2016 they came out with this. They said, let us make these other ones. So there's like, love, haha, wow, sad, and angry. So they made, they said, look, now you can not only express your engagement in, this one way. Let's make, so there's six different ways in which you could show your engagement to that platform. There was this other one too. There was this the care, Facebook Care React. I don't know if this is only in certain places. Yeah, but then maybe it's like only in Messenger or something. Anyways, then they also made this this Care React. So there's this little person hugging this heart. There was this funny one where it was like comparing this to like a Mayan or like an Aztec temple sacrifice or something, because they thought the React was pretty funny. Okay, I can't find it now. That's just to say that when Facebook came out with these new Reacts, it was not received 100% positively, though I think like in general there has been a positive reaction to having at least some more options in order to characterize how you respond to something. So now just think about it. We could think about it from like the product designer perspective, right? So now if you're Facebook, let's just say that your algorithms found that you actually get the most engagement, but this is correlated with the most angry reacts. So as a Facebook engineer person, you might step back and say, okay, maybe it isn't just engagement or like just the likes and stuff that we want to create the most of. Maybe we should direct people in order to optimize for haha. Okay, so maybe you want to make people like, I want to make people laugh, I want to make people happy. So then as your Facebook engineer, you tweak your buttons to optimize for haha, and then before you know it, like your site is full of like just trolling, people having their middle school prank moments on each other. And then you decide, oh no, that's not good. We need to make Facebook like more serious. It's not good that people are laughing like this. And then you have like sad reacts everywhere, and it's like, oh no, now we made everybody depressed. So this isn't to offer like a solution to Facebook, but it's just to say that the nature of parameterization and this general idea of collecting data and then modeling some policy that optimizes based on these things for some reason, a applied quantitative analysis, there's inherent problems with it because you could measure all sorts of stuff, but at the end of the day, the question is, how do you interpret and how do you actually use those metrics that you do capture and quantify and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so no new comments so far. I think we'll just go back and we'll bring this bring the topic back to the meta stuff because I think it relates directly once again. So with respect to this meta stuff, what Facebook is developing, Facebook and other parties, is a platform that now is going to have greater power for parameterization than ever. When you think about the whole idea of like virtual or augmented reality, of getting people to participate and to spend more time in some kind of computer system, naturally what that will do is that will develop, you could say, like game event data. So let's just say whenever somebody is plugged into this metaverse, whatever that means, whether it's the Oculus or just using an app on their phone, whatever it might be, that they are kind of like in this game. And then when they're in this game, then every action that they do could then be quantified. So, for example, let's pretend in this game you could like walk around in different places, okay? So then they could sort of gauge and say, okay, so how much walking around are people doing? How much, wandering from place to place? How much one-to-one talk are people doing? How much, all these things, right? So for a data nerd, people that like this quantification of everything, then this thing is like a dream come true, because you're basically encouraging people to put themselves in the sandbox, and then once they're in the sandbox, then you have all this data, and then you could try to adjust policies and stuff, and it's like a social science dream, in that once you you have all this data, including quantifying various aspects of people's social interactions, then you could try to steer society towards your version of utopia, whatever that means. All right, so that is, I think, a pretty... Oh, there was a couple more topics I mentioned here. So while we're here, I'll just mention a few. So under topics to discuss, the appeal of personality tests. Yeah, so basically, like personality tests, it's the beginning of a way to parameterize or to talk about something that seems a little bit more personal or important than what's your favorite ice cream. Now, on the other hand, what would you think if suddenly Facebook was quantifying your behavior based on various ways you interacted with the platform, and then they were giving you diagnoses and making recommendations for how you should live your life? And if they actually had some policies with teeth in the real world that you had to respond to that, that I don't know if that's something that we would want. But that is something that could come, and as I was saying, I think that this metaverse stuff, it's kind of a social science researcher dream type thing, and that suddenly it won't just be like trying to get university students to sign up for various long and arduous surveys and trials for experiments and stuff in order to find out about psychology, linguistics, whatever you want to call it. Instead, it'll be willing participants that just interact in this system, and then you, like a person watching like a fish in a fish tank. Let's pull up Fish Tank Finding Nemo to look at that. Get an appropriate image going. Yeah, so it'll be it's like that girl with the braces that's looking at it, right? This will be you and your friends in the metaverse. You and your friends in the metaverse, and then you're doing things. Your little avatars are going around, and there's people, basically it's like kind of digital administrator, policymaker, whatever you want to call them, that could analyze your actions and then say, this guy, he goes back in and out of the same place too many times. Maybe we should pull some levers to encourage him to go out more. Now, of course, the sort of freedom angle to that is to say, like, what should this platform's role be in telling me what I can and I cannot do. But I think that one inevitable consequence of like linking and gamifying stuff more is oftentimes basically you are relinquishing more control as the platform gets more centralized. I'll return this to like a food sales example. So suppose you just have like a little family restaurant and then you have a favorite food and you know the owners there. So whenever you go in, you could just ask them to make your favorite food. And that's cool. And then let's actually pretend you're the only person that orders this item. Well, if they're your friends, they know what you want, whatever, then there's no reason why, you wouldn't be able to get what you want as long as the people there, know you and they know how to make what you want and they have the supplies to do it. Now, on the other hand, if you reduce your restaurant business so it all goes through like a kind of app interface, so it's like, you go to Chipotle, select your, form, burrito bowl, burrito, taco. All right, now select your protein, chicken, steak, carnitas, tofu, whatever, right? That Chipotle is like parameterized food ordering such that they get the whole thing baked down to a system where instead of like, oh yeah, what do I have in the fridge? What can I cook? Something like that, a little bit, or not a little bit, infinitely more free and with more choices, though you could say maybe not as efficient in many ways. Maybe it takes more time to sort through and figure stuff out. You could see that the Chipotle way, it's actually much more efficient, especially for getting their supply chains and stuff, because by reducing the variety, they're able to more consistently deliver what they're trying to deliver. But one of the effects of that is that the options and the sorts of things they can and do deliver will continue to narrow. So I think the idea with the metaverse is theoretically, it could be cool, it could be awesome, you could go anywhere, you could do all these things. But it'll just be like how with a personal website, you had infinite freedom with HTML, CSS. You could make your website look anywhere, any way you want. People used to play like background music on their websites. You might have your own wild comments section. You might have any number of things going on. Then people switched over to social media. So eventually, like Facebook. Now on Facebook, I don't even like, you could change like your profile picture, the banner, and maybe what you write on the comments, like some things you describe on your wall. But in terms of the format and the layout and all of this, you don't get to control that in the same way that if you actually authored your own web page, you would. So then the question would be, well, then why don't people do that? Why do people use Facebook? And the obvious reason is because as a sort of social network site, you choose to use a site like Facebook because you get a lot of network, you get a lot of reach for what you're doing. But the big trade-off is because you have to operate within their parameters, sort of do things their way, and to succeed in that world, you might even have to optimize parameters in their sorts of way. Like I gave the example of the YouTube channel with Graham Stephan, how he changed the form of his videos in order to sort of win with the system. Then I think one effect to watch for, right, with this metaverse stuff is that, like people don't go on LinkedIn for fun, okay? Will the internet and stuff become more and more like LinkedIn, where you just get a lot of people that are trying to optimize their parameters? So instead of getting the exploration, interesting self-expression, all this sort of stuff, which drew a lot of people into the internet ahead of time, one effect of the parameterization will be a reduction of variation into kind of stupid little variables and people trying to optimize for a game, so to speak. Okay, so Dion had a couple comments here. Says, I remember in World of Warcraft, most servers you had the whole WoW universe to explore and 99% of it was dead. Kind of a metaphor for the internet in general. Yeah, okay, so I think this is another interesting example that has to do with games. Like I remember playing like the two RPGs I brought up was this MapleStory game and this Ragnarok online game. So what a lot of people would do in these games is they they wanted to succeed in the game, right? Like to have a powerful character, whatever it might be. So they would find like whatever path it was such that you get your maximum result. And that would be, for example, everyone knows that if you train on this one map in this one particular way, that you're going to maximize the gold that you get. So then you would have like this huge game world, but everybody would just be like, in town doing nothing, or like, training in the couple of profitable maps. But the vast majority of the world, it wouldn't be like, oh yeah, these people are in the forest here, these people are in the desert there. Like, it wouldn't work out kind of like this idea maybe that the developers would have in mind that people would freely inhabit it. And what a lot of these games would do is they would have what you would call like channels of some kind. So it would basically just be parallel worlds. So imagine like you're in line at Costco, and Costco is too crowded. So then you just press a button and you switch channels to parallel universe Costco, and then maybe in parallel universe Costco there is no line. So you would have these like duplications of the same map or the same thing or whatever, and people, they would just, even if it meant them just being by themselves, just grinding away at what they were doing, they would even play these like games that are supposed to be like, they're supposed to have a very important social aspect. A lot of people would just end up playing them in a extremely anti-social way, because it was basically just them versus the computer, and then other people were kind of a nuisance, because if you were actually just trying to optimize for some metric of like getting ahead in the game, then just from a getting stuff done perspective, if you're trying to maximize like income of in-game currency or something, then it wouldn't make sense to try to compete with other people over resources. So all sorts of stuff like this. We could talk more about various problems recurrent in video games, but what Dion said here, that's an interesting example. Cool. So I think that'll conclude our talk here for the parameterization of everything, and how trying to make everything data driven and push everything into these sorts of models has been a big feature of especially the last couple decades. We could call it our digital era, our internet era, our web 2.0 era, whatever you want to call it. It has been everywhere, all over the place. And we could study history, we could study like social dynamics, whether it's in business or video games, wherever it might be, and we could see what sort of patterns emerge for what sort of policies are put out. And hopefully moving forward, recognizing and learning from these things, we could use the technology that is available to us to do better. Like, that's what I'm trying to do here in this stream, right? So YouTube is a thing, whether we like it or not. Why don't we use it to make friends and stuff, which could be cool. Okay, cool. So here we got Dion, and he recommends a book, The Technological Society by Ilol. Cool. So I might have to check this out. Yeah, I'll just drop one note to say that. So on the last stream, I had people that told me during the stream or after the stream to look at stuff. And I think this is going to be one of the strongest, coolest features of having a place like this stream to go to, is that we could actually do the reading homework. Even if we don't read every single book, at least read a summary or know what it's about. So I wanted to show this. One of the people on the last stream recommended me to look at this interview, free podcast to listen to, about this fellow who worked for Apple, and the title of this podcast is The Original Remote Developer. So it was this story about how this person, before we had Zoom calls and all this sort of stuff, he was a remote developer in that he could go outside and not work in an office and focus on his computer programming. So that was cool. I don't know if the topic will come up immediately, But I'll remember, right, that this was sent and it might get mentioned again. So if people have things that they would like to talk about that they found interesting, feel free to send those things along. And, who knows, it might be something that a lot of other people find interesting. This is kind of like the original. Just think about this, like us as people who gather around, this stream or some website in common, whatever it might be. You could be like the original search engines or the original internet users, right? Because when the internet started, what sort of people were using it? Like academics and feds, right? And the academics, feds, and combination thereof, they could send each other links and information. And it wasn't like everybody just went and looked at one index. Rather, it was people that were exchanging stuff that they found interesting to with people they were interested in talking to. So in the same way, how cool would it be if none of us, if all of us were like, actually, I don't really need to use like Google or other sites to sort of find interesting topics anymore. We could focus and have the stuff that we read and that we look at be something that we know at least one other person or at least two other people or whatever care about. So that's another goal here, where it's whether it's in the comments or wherever, if we take the time to look at something just because somebody else thought it was interesting, or to read something just because someone else told us to read it, then I think that could be a very cool way in which we could sort of get a discussion group, an academic circle, whatever you want to call it. We could get something pretty cool going on here. All right, so thanks to everybody that dropped in. Do the YouTube stuff, like and subscribe, and feel free, if you think of something later even that's related to the topics of these videos that you want to discuss, then drop a comment for me and for other people. And I hope you have a good rest of the day. Thank you, everyone who came and joined today.